Response video 2, Anekantavad. I mean, it's surprisingly not terrible video. So let's play it.
Consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, and addiction. Let's take those as givens. And say, okay, now what?
Excellent. Yes, very good. Yes. Accept the premises, and now let's talk about what it means if that is the truth. Great. Thank you. Very good.
Well, Schopenhauer says, stop having babies.
All right, now let's just analyze that one, right? Most people have already stopped having babies, enough babies to maintain human existence. So most people, without agreeing with Schopenhauer, in principle, have agreed with him in practice. Okay, they've sort of taken having kids as a huge responsibility. I don't even want to do it. Even if society said, please have kids, they'd probably still say, I really don't want to. I want to have fun. I don't want to do this kid thing. All right, that's what most people have already decided. So most people have already decided not to continue the human existence, and it's only this minority of people who have all these kids. The dumbest, poorest population is having all the necessary and excess population. It's all coming from not only just the bottom half, but the bottom quarter, the bottom fifth, the bottom sixth, the lower you go, the more you get.
That's just the will to life, and the will to life is an onerous thing. It just leads nowhere.
Not even the will to life. Let's just play it for what it really is, okay? I mean, even if the notion of having a kid ever came into my head at any point in my life, it always did so in some sort of silly ego way. It wasn't a will to create you. I didn't want to have you. I didn't want to make one of you, right? I didn't even want to make somebody semi-cool. I wanted to make a version of me. That's the only thing that ever came into my head, was some vain notion that I could make a new little Gary that was even better than Gary. Just me, except me with whatever little improvements I could make. Whatever cheats, shortcuts I could give it as life experience from my life experience to make it even stronger, more powerful than me. So it was just me on a kind of perceptual steroids, but it isn't. But I also knew it ain't going to come out that way, because the bitch I'm going to have the kid with is going to spoil it with all of her creepy family genes. Her family's going to turn into a retard, so screw it. But yeah, if I could have cloned me, there was points in my life where I might have hit the clone button. I might have been crazy enough to do it, but it would have just been out of pure vanity, nothing else. Nothing else but pure, vain ego.
Nietzsche's will to power says, I'm not taking that laying down.
Well, again, see that whole attitude, like, okay, here, you give me an impossible truth and I will Sisyphus. Okay, so yeah, cool, great. I can see this macho attitude, like I'm not gonna let the truth get me down. I can even see it in some sort of realistic way, like you're in an unwinnable circumstance, like there's a 1 in a million chance you can win the battle, and you and your group of soldiers are just basically going to say, yeah, we'll be historic, we'll be immortal in terms of the spectacularness of our defeat, and just relishing on that fact that at least we fought the fight. We didn't just, sit there with a flag saying we lose. But the danger here, I think you can understand, is that this is not the right metaphor. Because fighting this truth can mean a huge downside risk. That your family all goes bankrupt, and your wife and your children all become orphans, and that there's an implication to this lost cause fight that just isn't free. There's a price tag for you resisting this truth. In the long term, you can create a god-awful pile of a mess by being defiant.
I'm not saying that Nietzsche actually offers specific answers as to what to do when you've decided that you're not taking it laying down. But he does point out convincingly that
for you, convincing for you, okay, just to qualify, right? You like doing that for you thing? Well, there's one of these for you moments. Convincingly for you.
Will to power, that will to escape the onerous set of circumstances that we find ourselves in.
Right. So I could do other analogies. Let's say I'm a scientist, and they come up with some sort of idea like nuclear fission or fusion, or doesn't matter. And let's just say that written into the rule book is, gee, there's this unsurmountable problem that'll always degrade and always melt down. And you could be defiant. Say, I'm not taking that sitting down. I'm gonna fight for the way to do it where it doesn't melt down. And even though the truth is screaming at you, you can't. Okay. You can only daydream about it, but you just can't do it. Can you see where there's a risk here? Okay, you could play with this fire and keep playing with this fire and keep playing with this fire, trying to put it in a bottle. And there's this risk, though, that it's going to catch everything on fire, and you're going to burn everything that matters down with your defiance.
Consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, and addiction, or in the case of this discussion, is just as much part of us as the will to live is.
All right, so the will to live and the will to procreate. So, we really do have to separate those, don't we? I mean, your personal desire to maintain your presence because not being here doesn't seem like a good idea. I mean, it just intuitively just doesn't feel right. Okay, it feels like a mushy potato chip. It's like, I'm not going to eat that. It's a soggy potato chip. Potato chips aren't supposed to be soggy. So yeah, you're just not supposed to be dead. You feel like I'm not supposed to be dead. All right, so you feel that way. But it's a feeling. It's intuition. It's not rational. It's not logical. It's not based on something that you really should have a lot of respect for. And I'm not saying you ever have to like the idea of eating a potato chip, but just make distinctions between these things at minimum. I'm just saying for the sake of the argument, let's make a distinction between procreating and living. Living and procreating are two different things. Living out your life as a great warrior and creating a new warrior are two different actions. So let's separate those two actions.
If we're going to accept things like the will to live.
Again, the will to live, you mean the will to procreate, the will to force another generation to Sisyphus the boulder. I'm going to Sisyphus the boulder, they should Sisyphus the boulder, we're all boulder Sisyphus pushers. Do the Dr. Pepper thing. You're going to force somebody into a Dr. Pepper suit and say you're going to tap the dance. That doesn't seem right to me.
Then we're going to have to accept things like the will to power, because the series of observations that culminated in Schopenhauer concluding that, formulating his idea on the will to live is no less exhaustive or no more exhaustive than Nietzsche's series of observations that led him to conclude to the will to live.
Well, I'm sorry, I guess his observations aren't as apparent as Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer goes into great detail about how life you just can't play the game and win. Nietzsche doesn't do exactly that. He doesn't show us how you can play the game and win. He just says to us, go ahead and don't look. Just don't let the suffering slow you down. Don't let the squishing sound slow you down. Don't let the cries and the yells and the tears slow you down. Just win. For you. For the sake of planting the flag. For the stoic sake of it. No. To say I didn't lose. That's it. Just so you can get to the finish line and say I didn't lose. Even though you can look back and you can see the mess you made getting there.
Will to power rather exists. It's simply part of who we are. And he says that it has a lot to do with our ethical system. Schopenhauer, he would say, has, or I shouldn't say Schopenhauer, but the idea of Schopenhauer's prescription of not having babies is kind of what he would call a slave mentality. In other words, I have been defeated by the circumstances around me. There's nothing I can do about it. Whereas the will to power says, I'm not going to...
Well, let's just examine that though as a defeat. Again, procreation and your life are two different things. Procreation is just one piece of your life, and as I think any fair analysis will indicate, most procreation doesn't have any high mind. It's all a low-minded activity. It's being primarily done on earth by the low-minded. And so you can say that we can't give up our will to live or our will to power, that we are the majority and we can't give this up. But that's not really the truth. It's not the majority, and it certainly isn't Nietzsche's, Uberman. It's not Nietzsche's magnificent man who's obsessed with this duty to procreate. It's the worst of the dregs, the most reckless, the most sloppy, the most unpolished, the most imperfect, that feel this compulsion to leak their imperfection into the world, to attempt to create, to play God. So that logically it doesn't fit your we statement. Okay, it's you, the minority. Call yourselves what you are. You, the minority, who wish to defend the recklessness of the poorest dregs of the human race in their idiotic pursuit of nonsense. I mean, declare what it is that you're doing with your will. Recognize the truth of your will, that you're willing that stupid people impose upon the intelligent, and the intelligent should take that up the ass. But certainly that's how I feel it was done to me. Nothing intelligent would have given birth to me.
Let that defeat me. That's aristocratic ethics. That says I'm going to take power over my own set of circumstances.
Well, I know, but it's not your own set of circumstances. So again, this is another idiocy. I'm going to overcome the stupidity of the Sisyphus bouldering by forcing somebody else to do it so I don't look as stupid. At best, that's all you can accomplish. You can just say, well, I'll make them do it, and then I won't look like as big an ass. I'll stick turkey feathers in their ass, and then I won't be the only asshole running around with turkey feathers in his ass. Is there anything less that people are doing than that? Is the end product any more ridiculous than that? It's just a self-justification. I end up justifying my Sisyphus moronery by perpetuating it, by making it inevitable. Keep imposing it so nobody can unimpose it. And keep imposing it with some notion of will to power. Use nothing else. You don't need anything else to keep imposing it but some notion of some other objective than the flat-out plain objective that is your direct route. You're just calling it something else. You're not saying will to perpetually enslave human beings to pushing Sisyphus boulders. Instead, just call it will to power and pretend you're not enslaving when you're directly enslaving. And then call that freedom. I had the freedom to enslave them. Brilliant.
It doesn't say that we actually can do it. But what it says is, the will to power says that there's something inherent in us that does not want to just knuckle under, even to the most seemingly
again, see, knuckle under. These are negative metaphors that you're using to describe a behavior, okay? Because, again, and even if I accept that, I don't see it as that at all. I see it as being very heroic to face a truth, okay? A truth that's going to mean your own demise, the demise of your hopes and your wishes and your ambitions. They're going to have to die, and you're going to have to jump on the grenade. And I see something incredibly heroic about being able to do that. But even if I accept your metaphor, that you're basically just saying it's over, we've lost, and you raise your little white flag, and now you start saying yes, sir, and no, sir, to the truth, and being owned by it. I mean, even if I accept that metaphor, the fact is that is the circumstance, is it not? I mean, you can't just argue that it doesn't matter which one you choose here, that somehow there's a free lunch, and it doesn't matter whether you squander, like if Lee never went to the surrender, right? If Lee was emphatic as you, if Lee was a nihilist and said there's no giving up, how many hundreds of thousands more lives would be ruined for nothing?
Inevitable of negative circumstances. That's the birth of tragedy. Meaning in the negative, meaning in suffering, value, goodness even in suffering, beauty in horror.
Well, I know. Yeah. Well, I mean, again, you can play with those words as you like, but again, you're playing with them. Okay, you're painting smiley faces, and it's just a way of. I mean, Nietzsche said it pretty clearly. I mean, he was pretty much acknowledging it by saying, "Don't let it weaken you," as if the clear recognition that yes, the only way to do it is not to see it. Just pretend it's not really bad. And just enjoy it for the pretty red color. That's not being reasonable. It's not being fair to the reality to obscure your vision, to create such a distortion of the reality. And that's what it becomes, a distortion. For the horror to be beautiful, you have to distort it.
Interesting thing, but it's part of our mind that I don't think is going to go away.
Part of our mind. Again, our. I don't think you're the our. I think the our is basically people who aren't thinking about it at all. And I think if you really forced them to, if you spelled all this crap out, gave it to them on a chart, and they could see the imbecility of what we're doing, the idiocracy of the plan, they'd say, okay, yeah, I can see, that's idiotic. Breeding ignorance is really dumb.
It's simply part of who we are.
Now again, says you. So this whole who we are thing is so subject to merely conditioning. We can see it in the world. People aren't born to eat rice, or born to eat steak, or born to dress funny, or born to dress silly. I mean, they aren't born to any of this crap. It's a completely mutable organism. So to say it is what we are, and we cannot be anything else. I was a carnivore in terms of what I ate, all right, for the first 16 or 17 years of my life. And then I became something entirely different. And it wasn't that big a deal. And clearly, wanting something, what people want now, they can acknowledge that maybe that's a little bit silly and extravagant, to play God and be a creator, that maybe that's above their pay grade. And maybe they don't have the competence. Maybe it takes a little more than they got to do that right. And again, all these you people sitting there saying all this crap need to do, I mean, all these people who have already not played the game, all they have to do is realize that, well, yeah, if they did make the game fair, if they made the procreators actually pay the $500,000 to raise a reasonable human being, instead of stealing the money from somebody else to do it, that maybe they would control their behavior.
I guess that's really the ultimate thing to argue. Are we that way? Are we, is the best thing for us to do to acquiesce? Or is the best thing for us to do to fight?
Well, as the acquiescence only has to do with the fact of your right to play God, which seems like, wow, that's way too much to ask us not to do, to be God players. You can do everything else, have big gluttonous orgies, you can do all kinds of crap are still left to you, okay? Defeat means you give up just one single thing, right? And that is the right to say, yeah, dumb, reckless slobs don't have a right to impose on the next generation either their dumbness, their ignorance, or their slobbery. They don't have the financing to do it. They don't have the competence to do it. They shouldn't be creating life. They shouldn't be in the God business because there's no way they're competent. And wow, that's what we have to give up, is the right not to say that, right? Your freedom not to tell the poor they suck. You have to give up your right not to tell the poor they're reckless assholes. Gee, what a horrible thing to give up. Man, I wish I could lose and have that as the penalty every damn day. Oh, I have to give up my right not to tell the poor they suck. Damn, what a horrible defeat.
I think I know the one that I subscribe to, but I don't really know if there's actually a right answer to these two. It just depends on what sort of person one is.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what kind of person one is for a reason. You're not a person for no reason. You're a person because reasons make you into the person you are. The principles are acquired, and the idea and the understanding. And what I would argue is our distinctions between me and you isn't so much in our humanness or our maleness or even in our some amount of book learning and an amount of culture and an amount of habit. We probably share all of that crap, but it's just a few little fundamental principles that make the distinction. Where you have a respect for culture and I have a contempt for culture. These kind of simple understandings, where I know something to be an incredible source of information. I mean, just, the boy who cried wolf, I mean, I know him to be a motherfucking cunt liar. And here you are, letting him tell you stories. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? You're getting totally duped by a liar. That little fucker has never had a straight, honest day in his life. And you're listening to him? Oh, come on. You're being duped. You're being snookered by your own ego.
Thank you.
Likewise. No, thank you. I mean, thank you. That was a reasonable video. So, yeah, to do something more like that in the future, and we'll get along. Because that was tolerable. Anyway. So, until next time.